you think it might be good, like moving forward? I find I frequently need this. Might be good to put a link to the previous meetings notes at the top of the meeting notes.
Right.
Just because I always find halfway, when we hit some of these subjects, I'm like, I know we've talked about that last time.
Yeah.
Like, what did we say last time?
Yeah, I know how to, I always use the
You got to,
HackMD interface to get that. But yeah,
oh, can you
it
do
might be
that
good.
somehow in the HackMD interface?
Yeah, if you go like to the home, like the home button, the top left, like it takes you to kind of like a home interface. I don't know if you have to be logged in though to see that. Probably you have, right? But then I see like the past meetings I kind of contribute notes to.
Oh my goodness,
Super handy.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm
But
gonna
yeah,
put,
having a
I'm gonna drop that link right in there.
cool. Yeah, having that link handy, like it's probably a good idea. So I'm not sure if we're live on YouTube. If not, I'll just manually upload the video later. But let's just assume the meeting is just starting. So yay! Welcome everyone to another NPM Open RFC meeting. Today is Wednesday, the 3rd June, and we're here to have some more discussions about NPM. So we have a quick agenda here. Let me first start out with acknowledging our code of conduct. I pasted the meeting notes already. Everyone participating in the call, you can go there and there's a link to our code of conduct to which we ask people to respect. And yeah, and maybe just outline the intentions of this call is to continue improving on the NPM CLI, collect some feedback from the users, and yeah, propose new ideas, uh, especially. So yeah, with that, maybe I'll open the floor if there are some announcements from anyone else. Well, if not, we can get started with the agenda for today. So I have here the first item. Uh, One item we just talked about the previous meeting too, which is the top level command to manage package JSON file. So I actually have a quick demo to do on that today. So maybe if anyone has just like feedback, anything wanna maybe just talk about it before. Otherwise, I'll just jump into a quick demo so we can kind of see how it works. Maybe we can collect like last round of feedback before we submit the pull request. Let me share my screen. So can you see my terminal? This terminal here.
Much better. Yes.
Cool. All right, so here I basically have this small, well, just it's actually one of our packages here. So it's just a valid package JSON. It's working. It's just the latest version in this repo here. So basically, yeah, let's start seeing how it looks like. So npm pkg. So here we can see the very terse health I was just starting with. And yeah, basically you can set keys and values. You can get, retrieve uh, values from your package JSON, or you can delete one key or many keys, yeah, basically. So yeah, I was also from the first round of feedback during the RFC and the actual RFC. Um, Jordan brought up, Isaac, the idea of using like maybe force to enable overriding the cases where you might have a string, but you want to replace that with an object. I know you left some good feedback there. That's probably a good idea to just throw in the scenarios that then the user can delete if they actually want it. But it might be nice to actually have also just the option to force it. So I kind of put there already.
So if you set foo equals bar and then later you set foo.bar equals baz, it'll throw an error unless you're forcing.
No, if you kind of like set let's run from some examples here. We can see.
Yeah.
We can reproduce some of it. So basically, yeah, let's start with getting, which is like the simplest of them all, right? So maybe just something like more useful here. So you can basically retrieve properties like this, right? You can also just go like for a single value. So right now, this syntax right here is kind of like a legacy from what we have in npm view. This I plan to clean it up and make sure we're returning just the string in case we're getting just a literal value like that, right?
Yeah, we should just show the value always. Like if I do npm pkg get scripts, it should be just the object, not like the subset
Oh,
of
yeah, no,
package.json.
yeah, okay, yeah,
Like
yeah, that's
I
good.
know what, I guess if you, can you get more than one key?
Yeah, so yeah, and this is actually the thing you're kind of like getting from. It's not necessarily the package JSON. See, like here is scripts.length because you kind of use that. So
Right.
this is a script because that's what you use. So like if you do multiple things, like let's see if this works. Yeah, see like it's script and then contributors.
I see. So it's just the field I passed in and then what that value is.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess if you can set multiple, if you can get multiple things, then you sort of have to identify which thing is which. That seems
Would it,
reasonable.
it's like, I hear the consistency argument for doing it the way it's done right now, but like, I also would expect kind of for convenience that when I'm only asking for one thing, it gives me the direct thing. But I also
yeah,
hate it when APIs sometimes give me an array and sometimes don't, and things like that.
right.
So
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time kind of bike shedding this particular thing. That's probably better to just sort of sketch out in GitHub, but cool. That's fine.
Yeah. I think it's I will definitely expect to just get that value. Honestly, like I don't really like the keying for the query here. Like, but yeah, we can follow up on the pull request, and then here, yeah, I can also just set values. So like, let's say I wanna set a new script here. I can just do something like this. Then we can see the diff, we can see that the run script got added. So yeah, the thing I was talking about, Isaac, let's maybe see some good example here in this
So
package JSON.
config get, just, sorry, I know I said let's not bike shed it, but worth noting, config get will only show the key if you give it multiple keys.
Oh,
So if you give it one key, it'll just show the value. If you give it multiple keys, it'll show key equals value, key equals value.
right. I think that is fair default behavior.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so here, Isaac, here's a good example of the throwing. So like if I try to override node with like an object, right? Let's say I'm turning this into node.foo, which would be an object with a property foo, and then a value of foo. Like in this case, it should throw an error, like it's already has a literal value in place. So it is an override.
well, what happens if it's an array?
Yeah, that's adding to
Go
an array is kind of tricky to do with the syntax we.
Well, yeah, like, so I guess, but I mean is if it's an array and I try and set an object property on it, I would expect to get this same error, which makes the error message slightly inaccurate.
Oh, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. Yeah, and I'm probably not handling that right now. Let me see.
What if you do like keywords dot foo equals bar?
Yeah. Let's see. What do I even get here? Oh, I get nothing. That's fun. Okay, so that's definitely one thing to shake off before submitting the pull request.
Yeah, so essentially though, with the engines.node.foo example, like what I raised on GitHub was like, I could delete engines.node first and then,
Yeah.
or engines.node. Yeah, and actually engines.node, not engines.node foo. And then I could run the command, it would work. But my thinking was like something like dash or whatever would could allow me to skip the delete step.
Yeah. So basically, that part I already kind of put in here. So like if we try the same command and we add force, like now it should have actually done it. So yeah, force just it's just a quick shortcut, I guess, for deleting and then setting the thing. So yeah, you can also like add to arrays, right? Like keywords there. Let me get the keywords again. So I know Jordan proposed this idea of having a shortcut to just appending things to the end of the array, which I really like. I like to get that out in the final implementation because yeah, it would be just handy. Like if I want to just add more items here, like instead of having to know that index, like I could just kind of do this and like have it being added to the end of that array, but that's not there yet. So for this example here, I'll just come here and set the keyword. So yeah, so basically you can like use arrays.
Can that support negative indexes too if it's an array, or would that be too weird?
Yeah, I don't think that works. I think, yeah.
Like, I mean, it probably doesn't work now, but if I put -1, like, could that map to the last item?
Yeah, I guess it could.
So I think
Make that work.
I think the plan as we sort of landed on last time was like the clear winner for like JSON getting and setting and querying seems to be JQ in userland. Let's just use that. But that will be if we want to do that, I mean, we should probably be doing that for NPM view as well. If we want to do that for PKG and for view, that's a breaking change. If we want to do it just for PKG, then we kind of have this inconsistency. I think for NPM 7, we do like, let's not get any more fancy than we kind of already are. Like it's if you want to do something fancy, like it's a text file and you can edit it. I sort of feel like this is more like if you do need to do something programmatic, then or something quick, and it's just like a little bit of a convenience. Certainly if I want to set, if I want to set all of the engines.node values to greater than or equal to 12 in all of my workspaces, that's a heck of a lot easier to do with one npm command than 12 vim commands. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So this, it's basically for now it's basically consuming the same internal kind of parser we had for view. So we could like just ship that in 7 and then like later on like plan to replace both of them to use JQ like in 8 or something like that. Yeah. So I guess like that's like the quick demo, like how it's working, which is basically just npm view and but touching our package JSON file. So yeah, so I think I have a good bug here to fix before that, and also the documentation to write before submitting the pull request. But I would appreciate any feedback while we still have time before opening the pull request. So please feel free to leave comment in the issue or pull request, or speak up right now.
What's package type?
Sorry?
Yeah, what is
PKG
type 2?
That was my quick and dirty idea to get basically casting, like type casting, right? If you want to set a number or a boolean. So basically you can set a PKG type of number and then convert that value you're setting to a number. The example of tab timeout, right?
Right, because CLI parsing is string only.
It's, yeah. So basically that's kind of like my quick sketch of like, let's just get something that get us running, right? Like in PKG, because it's prefixing to only the command, so that's kind of safer for.
Yeah, it kind of looks like I'm setting package type, like that should be package type equals module or type equals com.js or whatever. But no, that makes sense.
Do we have things in the package JSON now that are not strings?
Yeah.
That are numbers?
Anyone could have that in there,
Right,
like
but
ESM
I'm-
config.
I meant like, I want to err on the side of not adding things,
We
right?
have
Yeah.
booleans. Private can be true. Or
Yeah, we
false.
have we
Yeah,
have booleans.
yeah, yeah.
Booleans. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed real quick. What was package type again? As in,
Yeah, it was the thing to perform this conversion because everything is a string in the CLI argument parsing, right? So basically it will allow you to declare, oh, this is a number or this is a Boolean, so that it does the conversion for you before placing it.
Oh, okay.
Makes sense.
I'll bike ship that and on GitHub.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. Feel free, please.
Yeah, it is a little confusing. I mean, it definitely set.
So we don't support this in config right now.
Yeah, it's going to have to add that,
No,
that
because
extra config. Yeah.
INI is also strings only, and the CLI, and it doesn't make sense for it to be anything other than that because we know the type of each field we care about, and config is CLI flags and environment variables, which are always strings. So it's like in the config land, we live in a string world, and we cast when we care about it, if we care about it. In the package JSON world, it gets a little more complicated because now we kind of have that hop from CLI argument to JSON, which has types. Okay, cool. Yeah, we don't need to spend too much more time on it. This is cool stuff.
No, yeah, this is awesome. So thank you. And yeah, we can move on to the next item here.
Speaking of
which
adding
is-
configs,
Yes. The add in range config from Gar. Do you want to?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything new on this. We basically landed on agreeing that the real solution is to make update dry run do something, right?
yeah. The real solution is to make dry run print the diff in a human consumable way.
We talked about two solutions, that being the first like low hanging fruit one.
Yeah, that one solves the actual thing that was the inspiration for this. The other use case of outdated is there anything that I would not pull in from update, but I want to know about? So it's kind of like show me just the out of range stuff.
Okay.
Right.
And I remember that, but I don't remember that an action item from that. Does that mean this solves that first problem? We're good, and we know the other problems to be solved. Even though my PR doesn't solve the problem I thought, it is solving another one, right? So I guess my question now is this in-range pull request, is this right for solving the other problem, or do we need more?
I'd be willing to bet that with npm update dry run in the wild, we would get a lot more feedback as to whether and in what forms your PR is needed.
That's all I need. I'll close it, and we'll come back at it after we implement a dry run of update or update.
Well, at least take off the agenda label. We don't need to keep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you could leave it open in draft, but yeah, just we don't need to keep discuss back.
Cool. I take
Thank
off
you.
the label. Cool. All right, so let's go to the next one here. The RFC 392 group outdated package by dependency type. I remember we talked about a little bit about this in the last meeting. I don't know if this was the one we kind of like spent too much time on it.
It was sort of. I think the only action here is like, yes, it's fine. It's a good idea. We just need to be clear about what the priority ordering is. It's easy to sort by the first dep type that its name was found in and then by name, so that I don't have a case where I have 3 different dependencies on something and like one is optional, one is dev, and one is prod. I do want to have all those things grouped by the name, but it can still be sorted by whichever was the.
I do have those cases often. Almost everything I have as a peer dep is also a dep or also a dep.
Right. So in those cases, Yeah. So what you want to do is like, the way I phrased it last time might not even be quite accurate. Like what you want to see is, I want to see all the things that are production deps. And if they're also dev and also optional, okay, put that with that same name. And then show me all the things that are optional but are
Right.
not production. And then show me all the things that are dev but not optional and not production. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like with a hierarchy,
Yeah.
but still showing all the information. That sounds perfect.
Yeah, it sounds like we almost, yeah, no, like the action item here is to actually write a proper RFC, or should we just backlog it to our tickets?
The action item is to provide the feedback onto the RFC PR for how exactly it's going to be, it ought to be done.
Yeah, it is a
And
PR.
then,
Yeah, sorry, I missed that.
and then get that change and then land it.
Mhm.
But I don't think there's more to discuss.
Yeah, I'll also take out the gender label from this one.
Yep.
Cool. All right, and then we have our RFC 390
Let's
npm
break
publish.
some globs.
Exactly.
So I think that and with some very clear like explanation as to why the action here is to just say no, we're not going to do that, because it is deceptively complicated. As Gar pointed out last time, it feels like we're circling the drain on trying to guess the user's intent. And there's other mechanisms that allow you to do that, like a prepare or pre-publish lifecycle event. And there's actually a couple of use cases where you have like a templated, maybe I have a template like init script that just creates a files list of source lib bin, right? Well, some of my modules don't have a bin, and that's not an error. It's just like, I don't have that thing there. So
I mean, could we at least warn so that people are notified?
even warning, like if warning is not zero cost, right? If we warn, but it's a warning that you always ignore, now there's a warning you always ignore, and we've just reduced the value of our warnings.
Is there a trivial way to like quickly come up with a warning heuristic and then run it against the npm registry corpus and like see how many packages would warn just in the published content? I know that that's not the only use case that matters, but like,
well, I mean, we
is
identified
that something that would be?
We identified just from like a very cursory discussion of this, we identified some edge cases that are pretty tricky to try to figure out what the correct behavior is. Like the one I brought up last time was like, if you have a files list with two entries, and the first is lib/star.js, and the second is ! lib/foo.js, right? So, and the only file that's in lib is foo.js. Now, in that case, like the first one had a match, so it doesn't warn. But then in the second case, that match was negated out. In the second entry negates out that first case. And so it's not clear, like, should we warn or not? Because you had only one file, and that one file was not included. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like it had a match, but then it was taken away.
Right, like each line found a file, you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Each of those two entries targeted something.
Exactly. And that is a case that we've seen, right? That's a thing that's come up. I wasn't inventing that example. Like, it's somebody said, like, well, I should get a warning if my files array removed everything else. If I had a file rule that removed everything out of my package, I should get a warning about that instead of publishing a broken package. And it's like, well, yeah, but maybe you meant to do that. It's really hard for us to know what you intended other than what's in that list. If files was just a list of exact file names, and it didn't support negation, and it then we could say, okay, well, you've created a manifest, and there's something in that manifest that's missing. Like in that case, it would be very straightforward to warn in that case. And that is how some people use the files list, but it's not actually what the files list is. And so it
I have
gets
another
kind of
thought
tricky.
that's a similar, trying to address a similar problem, but in a completely different way. What if would it be possible to, if I'm publishing a particular version, whatever files were included in the previous version, which I know is not a well-defined concept, like if any of those aren't present, could it warn?
So now in order to publish something, we have to make a fetch, unpack it, do a diff of the files. I mean,
well,
we have NPM
that would be
diff
without
for
sort of server change. I'm not asking about the practicality. I'm more just saying, like, let's say there's an endpoint that just says, here's a files list and a version and a name. Like, give me a, tell me if anything's missing. Like, but yeah, it would be a request.
Right. So again, it's really difficult for us to know what your intent is. If I intend to remove a
Right,
file,
but that's what I mean is if they've, oh yeah, I guess with exports you could be removing a file and that wouldn't be a breaking change. That's a fair point.
Exactly.
All right.
Or it might just be something like even without exports, it might just be something internal. And yeah, okay, technically somebody could have required that file, but they're not really supposed to, and maybe it doesn't even work if you use it that way. Like, removing a file is not necessarily a breaking change that we need to warn on. Also, like you said, previous version is not a very well-defined concept.
So, Jordan, you can programmatically do this. I don't think NPM should. If you want to do that, fetch the latest tag, and then get registry npm.js / your name / your name - that version .index. That's all the files.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be, I could do it, but I'd have to jump through more hoops than that. I'd have to grab all the versions and then figure out which one was the quote previous version and then request that one's file list. And then, but I see what you're saying. I'm just trying to kind of brainstorm out loud for.
It sounds like, Isaac, could you just type up a polite no and close this one? And give that exact example of foo /JS and excluding foo as we can't guess the user's intent, only you know what you mean. You've got to write this in your project as a handler.
Yep. Will do. I'll take the edge cases we found last time.
Cool. And yeah, feel free to take it out of the agenda if you feel like we discussed it enough.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So yeah, the next item here is my other RFC, for NPM workspaces, the auto switching context based on current working directory. And yeah, it's one that I continue to collect feedback, basically people confused, trying to run things in their child workspaces and not working as expected. And yeah, so I left it here in the agenda just because I'd like to just bring the idea. Maybe we should just start with the warning. I think a warning will be very helpful to users here. At least we run the detection algorithm, detects you're currently in a child workspace of a root project that is configuring that as a workspace. So in case it identifies that, then it just prints a warning. Oh, instead of running npm run start, maybe you want to jump back to your project root and run npm start pointing to the workspace name using the workspace config. So yeah, basically I just want to kind of collect maybe feedback. Do you think it's a good idea to start with the warning and then maybe we can move on with the more robust approach using a configuration option for the nested workspaces?
Well, so the performance nitpicker in me definitely is not eager to add
Yeah.
another case where we have to, do 10 to 20 stat calls
Mhm,
looking for package JSON files
mhm.
and then read them and then parse, if it
Yeah.
has or whatever.
In every single command, and I know.
Right.
So
In every command.
the don't guess user intent person is balking at the auto part, and like really what we want is for them to be able to say that. If you take the auto out of it, it becomes really easy, right? It's a config item that they can in the npmrc in the workspace say this is what you need to be doing, right?
Yeah. That's a good point.
And
I
it takes
think
all the guesswork out of it.
Another way that we could go with this, which I brought up last time, which solves the performance and the and keeps some of the benefit of the auto while making it a little more like deterministic, which is the first time you reify from the root project, it puts a marker on all of those workspace folders, whether that's a file or a symlink in their node modules folders or something, and that could deterministically say, like, look, this was previously built as a workspace, and from now on npm will work as if it's in a workspace whenever it's in this folder. We
talked about that last week in the work, when you don't npm install at the root initially because you're in a large monorepo and you first cd into the sub project.
Right.
But
So
if you have an npmrc and the first time the root is reified, those npmrcs are created and then committed, then that use case is covered.
Yeah. So basically, or you could create that marker, whether it's a RC file or whatever. Could always create it manually, and then you could also delete it if you wanted. If you don't want to have that,
right, that
flag there, you could say, no, I intend to do this differently. But I don't see a way that we can do this in a performant and deterministic way, and secure way, without having some kind of something other than just a folder walk, right? Like I don't want yet another case where you can do some monkey business, like create a user named node modules and hijack everybody's thing, or whatever other weird stuff you can do.
Yeah.
But I guess we've talked about this a bunch of times, right? Like, is there a reason that my original suggestion wouldn't address all these concerns, right? Which is that it's an npm config value. The first reify at a workspace will create the npmrcs with in each sub project pointing explicitly back to the root workspace. And then any command run at the root is of course run in the workspace, and any command run in a child project would look up that npmrc value, which it has to do anyway, and it can be overridden per command or whatever, and then it would either point at the workspace or it would run as if it's not in a workspace based on the user's intent, which we would default to pretend it's in a workspace.
Yeah, basically we would add and that also actually gets around the auto guessing of user intent, because now what we've done is we've added a config, right? We've added a config value called workspace root.
Correct. Exactly.
So if I want to cd into any random folder and run npm install -- workspace root equals .. or whatever, I'm going to just behave as if this is a workspace within that project, or I'm going to throw if I'm not in one of those defined workspaces. But now I have one specific place to use as my root. And then the second step is we create that workspace root equals path within each of the workspace targets on first reify.
Right.
I think it is a great idea. Kind of solves all this problem. The only issue I have with it is, which maybe is not even that important, but it doesn't really work for people that already have created an npm 7 workspace setup today, right? Or maybe just someone following some tutorial, right? Like that was written previously, it's not taken into account in the NPM RFC. And
Well,
that
I
person
mean, the
kind of-
tutorial, if the tutorial is dealing with NPM with this new workspaces feature, then the first install they do at the root would put in the NPM RCs anyway. And if they used, I think there's a command like workspace init or something. If they use that to sort of
NPM init.
upgrade their child projects to be NPM workspace child projects, then that command can also put in the NPM RC
Sure.
as well. Because it's like,
Yeah.
when it, you know, and so if we are encouraging people to use those commands, then like there should be very few use cases or like workflows where the default doesn't end up with an NPM RC with workspace root explicitly pointing from the child to the parent. And then anyone who wants to override that value can of course do that, and no other command would touch it regardless. You could even just delete the NPM RC, and as long as you didn't like, well, you probably couldn't delete it because if you reran npm install at the root, it might put it back. But you can commit it with the alternative value, right? Like you can leave it blank or something. We could even create the initial npm RC with a helpful comment above the config value telling you what to set it to if you don't want this behavior.
Yeah,
There's
because
like-
that's the other side of the problem, right? Like, what if users want to opt out of the
Right, and I will want to opt out in most of my projects, but like I'll just change the npm RC value and move on with my life, right? Like,
Oh, okay.
You could also, I
And-
mean, you could also leave it there and run a command with dash dash workspace root or workspace root equals dot or something like that. Like,
Yeah,
or I could set an
yeah,
environment variable. Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, then we get the benefit of all of the config management stuff that we have, the
Correct.
benefit slash hazards.
Right. And
Yeah.
yet we do have to pick a default, which means we are sort of implicitly deciding which use case is more common. And I don't know, like without the fundamental changes we've talked about for workspaces in the past, I think the more common workflow is in fact to treat a child project as if it's in the workspace. Right. I think that might shift with the changes we've just, we haven't quite done yet, but for now, I think this is the proper default, and that I think that the folks like myself who want to opt out are easily able to do that. And also, especially if there's a little comment in the npm-rc file, if you want this kind of behavior instead, change the the below value to null or to empty string or whatever the thing is. Right?
Yeah. Is that something we have by default, Isaac? Just like some examples of
Generated config.
properties with a comment on it, like that's kind of handy. Yeah.
No, but it's easy to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be nice to maybe just
Usually when we write ini files, we just like ini.stringify the object and then dump it,
right.
which doesn't put any comments in there. But when we do like npm config ls, it outputs ini formatted. Like you can run npm config ls and pipe that to an npm rc file and it just works. And I think also that when we do npm config edit, we open it up with some ini comments so that you can see what you're doing kind of in the editor. And then when we save it back, we just strip all those comments out.
Cool.
But it's not hard to write a file with an extra line in it. Like,
yeah. Okay.
so yeah, I think you've got your action item here, which is update that RFC to be this way.
Definitely. Yeah. So yeah, if anyone else has more comments, feel free to follow up on the RFC. But yeah, I think I'm kind of happy with that direction. Then yeah. Okay, no automatic, like just detecting and throwing things. Good. Yes, we have a few more items here in the agenda. Another one from Gar here.
Yeah, multiple disk tags. What's the status of this? Last I heard, it was kind of punting until the registry can support it.
Yeah, the agenda needs to be removed from this. It's kind of dead in the water.
Yeah, we can't do that if it's not atomic. That's too hazardous.
There was also some bike shedding about like what the flag would look like, because it's not backwardly compatible if we want to have multiple, like how diff works, right? -- diff, how that works. We can't make it do that because older versions would just use the last one. So like, I don't know, it would have been nice, but it doesn't look like there's a very good programmatic way to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, like you want to be able to specify the kind of config-ish way to do this, CLI config-ish way to do this in NPM would be you just do -- tag multiple times.
Yes.
Yeah, but then if you try that and you're accidentally using an older version of NPM, it just will
Yes.
silently publish with only the one. Yeah, that sucks. Okay.
Cool.
So,
So should I
Remove the
take
agenda
out?
label. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, we could
Okay.
also, we could also make it a different config value and deprecate -- tag on publish or something like that. But npm publish -- dist tag equals foo equals bar equals paz. But and then old versions of npm would just silently publish only to latest. But at least I'm using a config that is new and requires.
Right.
Yeah, the thing is though, if that publish cannot be atomic with a single put, and we have to kind of like jerry rig it with a single publish and then a bunch of dist tag set commands, that's not great, right? Because you really want the publish to either fail entirely or succeed entirely.
Cool. So maybe leave that. I don't know if these comments are already there in the RFC.
Yeah, most of that's in there.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So let's move on here. We have two more items. The next one I think we can skip. Tierney is not here today, but basically npm audit licenses. I know it's work in progress now, so we can probably take it out of the agenda until it's kind of ready for a demo or something. Let me do this. And then I put a new item there in the agenda from another RFC from the issues. But basically, I know Gar and Nils have been working a lot at the config refactor. And I know you've mentioned this. So maybe we want to talk about this one, the respect platform specific directories, config, data, cache, etc.
We've been working on what?
And a lot of the config refactor.
Oh, that was me and Gar, but
Okay.
doesn't matter. The tricky, so this is the XDG home thing, XDG config home.
I know Georgia has been quite engaged in that conversation. Maybe.
Yeah.
The only thing I would strongly insist on is that we do not change the defaults.
Yeah, I think that's hard to do. Yeah.
Yeah, if somebody already has a home / like the actual lift to get here is kind of tricky, right? We're going to need to. We can't just drop support for ~/.npm, not .npm rc. And yeah, I would love to go back in time and make npm look for all of its like get rid of the .npm rc and get rid of the .npm folder and have the xdg config home /npm, and then that's our working folder. And there we put our config and we put our cache and we put our everything, right? But it is really not easy to do.
Yeah, I mean, time traveling, right? It's kind of hard.
I mean, I would debate that philosophy if that were an option. It's not, so I won't bother.
Yeah. So I think the action here is we shut this down and say, sorry, we know that we're not like Unixly correct, but also we're not going to break 12 million users.
Well, to be clear, that like there's a number of folks in there that are zealously arguing that only XDG is correct and screw everything else. But there is a reasonable ask in there, which is when the XDG bars are set, use them instead. And that seems, even though I don't personally care about that, that seems at least worth discussing.
But even that is a huge breaking change, right? I mean, I have the XGG config bars set.
Oh,
on
I
my
see. You mean like
computer.
someone who has the existing files and also the existing environment variables
Yeah,
would
exactly.
suddenly start seeing different locations. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Although for cache, it wouldn't. It's really only config, I think, that would be an issue, right?
Yeah, so for cache and log files and all that stuff, I mean, we could actually go to only XGG is correct and nothing else for the things that we manage, apart from user, kind of separate from the user, right? Nobody is, hopefully, nobody is relying on the like .npm/underbar cache/content /v5/ SHA-SUM file being in a particular location, right? If they are, they're in real trouble already, because we move that stuff around all the time.
They might be relying on rmrf /.npm clearing the cache.
Well, they shouldn't be doing that either. But
Shoulds are nice and all.
yeah, exactly. But the point is, like, we never promised that was always going to be where things live, like, or that you could make changes to it and expect those changes to persist, right? Like, that's something that is npm's stomping ground, that tilde/.npm folder. But the tilde/.npmrc file, like, that is a thing that you're allowed to edit. It's intentionally, like, it's using INI format specifically so that you can edit it in like a very humane kind of way. If we were to move to XDG for config, we would basically have to, like, on first run, detect that there's a home/.npmrc file and move it. And then
what do you do when there's both?
Exactly. So if there's both, I don't know, throw and tell the user to pick one, like, and now we have two different default places we look for user config. It's kind of a nightmare. Like, it could be done, but it is costly, and I'm not really convinced that the benefit makes it worthwhile. Even if we had a time machine, there's actually much more interesting things I'd want to do with that time machine. I would probably, if you gave me a time machine, I'd probably still just kind of leave it as it is.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, as much as we can talk about whether XGG is philosophically ideal or not, but like the reality is that it is not that many users that are interested in tools following that specification. NVM's been around for a long time, and it's gotten less than a dozen human beings in that entire time that have spoken up about it.
Yeah.
They're very, very vocal, but there's very few.
The other thing is, like, you can just make npm behave in an XGG compatible way by setting either an environment variable or a global config that says, or I guess you can't do it with a global config, but you could do it with a built-in config or with an environment variable pretty easily, and just say, like, here's your cache folder, here's your user config folder, here's your user config file, here's your global config file, like, and it will just, okay, voila, you're now XDG compliant. So I'll give that little, like, XDG kit that people can dump in their bash RC if they really want npm to behave that way. But otherwise, yeah, I don't see this as a thing we're going to do.
Yeah, and that might be good enough for some of these folks there. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so maybe the action item here, Isaac, maybe just leave a reply there.
I will give them a workaround, and the bad news that we're not going to do this.
Cool. All right. Sounds good. I think with that, that's the end of the agenda. Anyone else have anything else that you want to talk about? Well, yeah, if not, thank you all very much for showing up, and see you not next week. We're actually not going to be having this meeting next week, so probably the week after. Okay, Thank you all.